Hi, I'm Terry Underwood, and we are here in the studios at SAM, Southborough Access Media, and we have as our honored guest today District Attorney Joe Early Jr., and welcome.
Thanks, Terry. Good to be here.
So glad to have you here today. And you have so many programs and things that are going on that it's head spinning. That to be able to have visibility and the ability to do things about things that are going wrong in people's lives and in the communities, and I think 60 communities is what
Yes.
I recall. That's a lot. But you are not a one-man show, nor should you be.
No.
And so you have quite the staff of talented people who
do.
support you, and they in turn support the communities. And so I know some of your missions have been on opioid, on bullying, on prevention. And I'm wondering if you can talk about some of these programs.
Sure, I'd love to. I ran for this job 12 years ago. I had been a defense attorney for 17 years. Prior to that, I'd been an assistant district attorney for about 3 years and assistant attorney general for 2 years. One of the things that I saw in my 17 years of defense was that a lot of people make mistakes. A lot of young people make mistakes. It's usually around drugs and alcohol. Mm-hmm. And I got into the business, I will say, because of my father. And he was a congressman. He enjoyed helping people. He never took any credit for anything. So I was about 47, 48 years old, doing this a little bit differently than most. And I thought I wanted to give something back. And we had a discussion, and I told him what I was looking to do. He thought I was crazy. I had a real good job at the time. I was my own boss. I had my own law practice. I was making a good dollar. I had a young family. And I just said, Dad, I want to do this. I want to give something back. Don't want to be in my 70s and say, why didn't I do this? I could have made a bigger difference in people's lives by doing this, and I didn't. So I ran for district attorney, got elected. Started my 4th term now, recently got elected. We did very well. And one of the focuses I put was on the juvenile court. And it's our most important court because young adults, children's brains are still developing. They tell us even up to the age of 25. And I thought we should get into the schools. We should bring a message to the schools about prevention. We should bring a message about drugs and alcohol, internet safety, bullying. And we've done that, and we've addressed over 500,000 students in the elderly with our programs. And I love this program. I love it. We'll often tell the kids during our talk that the hardest part of my job is talking to people in pain. And it is, whether it be a motor vehicle accident, whether it be a homicide, whether it be bullying. We can stop some of this, and we can get kids to get smart about responsible and good decisions, teach them the golden rule. And that message really reverberates. And the kids take that message, they take it to school, they do different things with regards to bullying projects, pink out days, stuff like that. And no kid should have to go to school and worry about being safe or bullied at school.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. If you start younger, you're hoping, the idea is that you will create the ripples that grow,
Yes.
and that they can then be the future leaders that they need to be. And,
Right.
And I can see that what you are doing, the ability that you have to reach out to so many people in the communities, it has to be, you enjoy doing it, but humbling too.
Oh, we did it, and I never took any credit for it, but in this day and age, if you want to get reelected as elected official, you've got to tell people what you're doing. So we have a Facebook page now at the WorcesterDA.com website. We have a Twitter page. And we'll talk to people, and we'll let them know we can come to your school. I think we haven't been to the middle school here in about 2 years, but we came out with our bullying program. Evelyn Miller, who does a good job, and like you said, you're as good as the employees around you. And she works in conjunction with our juvenile court. I mentioned it's our most important court. We've put our best and brightest prosecutors in the juvenile court. And for example, we've sped up the time to get a jury trial. If you need to get to a jury trial in juvenile court, because we also have diversion programs to divert it away from the criminal justice system and not get a kid a record. But when I get in, it was about 6 months to get a jury trial in the juvenile court. Now it's 2 to 3 months. You can get a jury trial in as little as 3 weeks. And that's what we need, swift, compassionate justice. And at the same time, by being in the schools, to get these kids to listen about bullying, to listen about their phones, how their social media in this day and age, I tell them it should be your heart what defines you. But as I talked to my good friend J.P. Ricciardi, who used to be the general manager for the Toronto Blue Jays, an assistant to the general manager for the New York Mets, and now he's an assistant to the general manager of the San Francisco Giants, I told him about a prospect, and he said, Joey, we went to his social media. We don't want him because his social media had pot, marijuana, and it had alcohol in it. We don't sign contracts with people we deem to be risks. So a lot of the young boys and girls can identify with that. They all want to be professional athletes of some form or another. But it does personalize it so that they know you can't put anything on your social media. We tell them delete doesn't always mean delete. Our detectives will go to a phone in a serious case, and that's where we'll get a lot of our information. Because if it's been put into the phone, even when you hit delete, it's still there.
And so you mentioned Ellen Miller. So she is part of your staff. I met her once here as part of a program for, it was a junior police academy, and the students really responded to her. It's called the World Wide Web. You're right. Once it's out there, it's out there. So what kind of things would you be teaching them? Because the students are being bombarded with social media, with all sorts of platforms where they can, they have no idea or no ability to think through what the repercussions would be of the judgments that they're making at that time. They just don't have the capacity yet.
Right. What we tell them, for example, is if you're going to take a picture and put it on the internet, if you wouldn't put that picture on your refrigerator in your kitchen for everyone to see, don't send it out on the internet. We teach them about the golden rule and how oftentimes when people are bullying, and young girls will bully online more than young boys, and I don't know why that is, but we'll tell them, and I have 3 daughters, but we'll tell them, you can see my reaction. You can gauge my reaction if I'm happy, if I'm mad, but you can do that. But when you put it out online, you just don't know. And oftentimes we'll say, why'd you do that? Well, we thought it was funny. In that we thought it was funny will lead to people piling on. And we've had extremes. We run a school safety and wellness summit every year. And we had a young man came up to our expert and said he'd rather get beaten up than bullied online. Imagine that. Because getting beaten up at a starting point and an end point, but getting bullied online went on, and he got to the point where he wanted to hurt himself. So when we get to a situation like that, we tell the kids, talk to a trusted adult. Talk to a trusted adult. If you don't feel comfortable online, talk to a trusted adult. Cut your losses. Cut your losses. Don't make the situation worse. Go, whether it be your mother, your father, and to the mums and dads, we tell them, don't shoot the messenger. Whether it be a teacher, someone at school, you've got to talk to a trusted adult. Because there's a lot about bad people out there, especially online, internet predators, who mean to do you harm. So these are some of the things we also talk to them about. We talk to them about opioids and alcohol. And the opioid crisis right now is the biggest social problem of our generation. We're losing roughly a little bit more than 2 people every 3 days in Worcester County. We tell parents.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. In 80% of the time it starts with a prescription drug, either legally or illegally obtained. We tell mothers and fathers, if your child's getting their wisdom tooth out. Now I started this opioid task force, over 400 strong, and we bring the message out. 2 Advil and a Percocet, 2 Advil and a Tylenol are more effective than a Percocet in non-addictive. I've done that before, 2 Advil and a Tylenol are more effective than a Percocet. In Percocet, Vicodin, OxyContin, oxycodone, and heroin all come from the morphine molecule. And Purdue Pharmaceutical got us into this mess in the 90s by telling us OxyContin was non-addictive. Yet they know, and they're in a lot of lawsuits right now where they're settling. They just settled a big one the other day, for not telling doctors who prescribe these medications the truth. And what we're getting right now is we're dealing with all of that. And unfortunately, about 2,000 people in Worcester County, 2,000 people statewide, or 350. It goes up as we get the tox screens back. 350 to 375 died in Worcester County from opioid abuse.
And so it's not just the students, or the young folks who are affected by that, because we are all led to believe that through all the advertising and repeated messages that are just hounded into us. And so the same thing works with the social media. You hear something over and over again. Oh, it's on the internet. It must be real. You're led to believe that, or the colors or the flavors of different things, and oh, it must be okay just because I see it more often. So it works in the negative. So that makes your message and your staff all that more valuable and important of a resource. I know you were talking about grants and so forth, and so what kinds of things do you do with grants, or the money that you have seized, or property that you've seized from some of the criminals, or what happens? Because I would love to hear a happy story on that.
I can give you a great story on that. We found, the Department of Justice has told us that if you keep young adults busy between the hours of 3 to 6 after school, after an education, that is our #1 crime prevention strategy, most successful strategy. So we'll take the money that we've gotten from drug dealers and I'll put it back into the community in prevention efforts, keeping these young adults, whether it be the sports, whether it be dance, whether it be the band, the arts. I'll keep kids working with our community partners busy between the hours of 3 to 6. And it's worked, because working with our community partners, juvenile delinquency complaints, since we've gotten in, have gone down by over 57%. And that's amazing. You want to get the numbers down in the jail, again, you attack when the kids are in those formative years, when you can still get to them about good behaviors, bad behaviors. An example is someone who commits a sexual offense before the age of 17. We know that if we get them in the right program, we can reduce the recidivism by 75%. Only 25% of those young adults will become recidivist. Yet when you get to someone after the age of 18, we know the numbers flip, that we can only stop 25% becoming recidivist, and about 75% will become recidivist. So that's why it's so important to get to these young kids when they're young, when we can modify, change behaviors, when we can talk to them about responsible decisions, when we can talk to them about texting and driving. And that's another great program we come to the schools with. We've been to a lot of high schools. I believe we've been to Algonquin. But I love this program because, again, we talk about how life can change in the blink of an eye. In that, for example, texting and driving on a highway. Would you ever shut your eyes for 3 to 5 seconds? No, but when you are looking at the phone, that's what you're doing.
You can't do it.
And you've traveled the length of a football field in those 3 to 5 seconds on the highway.
Yep, you are in a weapon, and at that speed, and it just won't go well.
No, and we're seeing more tragedy, and we tell the kids, go home, talk to your parents as well. Tell them, if you love me, don't text and drive. And a lot of, like, for example, the roads in Southborough, they're windy. Speeds will fluctuate from 20 to 25 to 30 to 35. Those roads are where we see most of our tragedies. If you take your eyes off the road for 3 to 5 seconds, there's a really bad chance you're going to hit a tree. You're going to hit someone with a baby carriage or a stroller or a jogger or a bicyclist.
Anything like that. I know you have other programs, and so is there one, you talked about several, one that you're working on now that you would like to discuss and get the word out on?
Sure. To the middle schools, we invite you to request our program. This is not about drugs, because it gets to these kids in these formative years. 6th, 7th, 8th grade is the perfect audience for this. They take a test, they see a video with people who have become addicted to drugs, then take the test again. And it's an evidence-based program that we got through a grant, and we show it, and I love showing this. We've got a high school movie called If They Had Only Known. If They Had Known. And this is about a young man named Clay Soper out of Winchester, Massachusetts, was with his friends, and he took a Xanax, a benzodiazepine, then drank alcohol. First year of college, second year of college, third year of college. And they were playing beer pong after taking the Xanax. And Xanax is an antidepressant, the alcohol is an antidepressant. When he got very drunk, they should have taken him to the hospital, but instead they put him to bed to let him sleep it off, and he died. This is also, it's about a 20, 30-minute movie. We've got that, we bring that out.
So you bring that to high schools to play at assemblies, and so how is the reception for that?
Reception's great. It's an eye-opener. I've got 3 kids in college myself right now. My wife and I do, and I want them all to see this because it just opens your eyes to things you really hadn't thought of. But again, by empowering the kids to make good choices, good decisions, give them that knowledge. I know this is what I enjoy doing the most as a district attorney. It's the prosecution of horrific crimes is a big part of our job, but I think prevention is also just as big a part.
You mentioned one word there, empowering, that really can, because it just takes one moment of decision, one moment of self-confidence to say, no, I'm not going to do that, or no, I'm not going to let that cyber bully information bother me. And it's really hard because they're still young minds, as you said, formative years, and to get the support from, as you said, a trusted adult, to get the support from a trusted teacher, could be a teacher, could be a neighbor, could be a relative, but your office has all these resources. So if a high schooler, middle schooler sees something that's going on and they're very worried, and maybe they don't feel that, maybe they feel they're going to get in trouble if they tell their parents. If it were your daughter, what would you say? How would you guide them?
What I would say is this: the decisions that you have to make with regards to calling a trusted adult, or if someone's in trouble, calling a hospital, are so much easier than the decisions you're going to have to make if something goes bad when you're in front of a judge. And a lot of that comes from my experience as a defense attorney. No matter how bad it seems, and we tell the parents, please don't shoot the messenger. Have a plan with your kid. If they're in a car where kids are drinking or taking drugs, have a plan where they can call home, and you tell them you'll pick them up at any time. We've got to do everything we can to avert the tragedy. And the hardest part is you can't be judgmental. You have discussions, but when your child calls up, you got to accept that call and not shoot the messenger.
Because they did reach out. You were successful then.
They did what you told them to do.
Yep.
But as parents, the tendency is, who are you with? What'd you do? Who did this to you? You know, why are you doing this?
When it should be,
are you
how
okay?
can I, are you okay? How can I help?
Right. And you got a great police department in Southborough. There's a great police department in Northborough. You got some great schools, the middle school here. Please invite us to come talk about bullying. Invite us to show if they had, if they had only known, or this is not about drugs, texting and driving. I know we're making a difference with this, and you won't see it on the front page of the paper. And we work with our community partners great. And if there's a team or a group that needs funds, again, I've given over $1 million back to the community to keep kids busy between the hours of 3 to 6. Apply for a grant with us.
That is absolutely fantastic.
And it's not public money. It's
I know.
It's drug dealers' money.
I know. I'm thinking about that and processing that, and how wonderful that is in a very twisted way. But it's
in a nice twist.
It's good karma, and it's the right thing to do. And I guess that's what you're looking for people to do. That in that moment, make the right choice.
Right.
And sometimes people need support to be able to do that, because they may not have the benefit of years or the benefit of time because they're in the heat of the moment. But also in your office, I guess I think of you, and I think of prosecution, I think of all the legal side.
Yes.
But so it has to be a huge relief when you can have some effect and get back information that your staff has done their job, that you've done your job, when you're not seeing an increase in that area.
When we get in, I also started an unresolved homicide unit, and we had about 10 successful prosecutions with that. We had some great prosecutions. Danny Bennett used to be the Secretary of Public Safety, tried a great case. There was no gun, no body, no DNA, and he got 3 first-degree murder convictions, which are one's before the appellate court right now, may end up being a second-degree conviction. But to the family who had lost someone 20 years ago, the pain is just as much as it was then. They had the Middlesex Woodsman, we got a conviction on that. Another 44-year-old case up in the Fitchburg area. We gave relief to 2 sisters of the victim. I'm real proud about those prosecutions, because to those families, that pain is just as real as if the homicide happened last week or a month ago.
Well, it also hopefully is a deterrent for those people who think they can just get away with something. And yay.
Yeah. And I'm real
Go,
proud.
Joe.
You're only as good as your staff, and I get some great people that work for me.
I know you do.
We also have the first accredited child advocacy center in Worcester County that helps the victims of sexual abuse and trauma through the system. Whereas they might have gotten interviewed as a victim several times before by the police, by the doctors, by the nurses, the social workers, and the
You're
DA's office.
victimized over and over again.
You're right. We have an accredited child advocacy center where they tell their story once behind a two-way mirror, and it's videotaped and audio taped, and I'm real proud of that, helping the victims and especially their families through the process. That's one of the things I have a tough time wrapping my arms around, the victimization of children, but I'm real proud of the work we're doing there.
I'm going to take a guess and just throw a dart in the air and say that while other communities, other states may be doing things, I think of Massachusetts as a forerunner for doing some of these things because it's impressive.
Yeah.
And it's got to be somebody who's suffering in silence for some of these things to have support to go through this process, but not have to be re-interviewed over and over again and re-victimized. That people don't want to come forward then.
No.
And that's just a fact. That's not.
Right. And we'll work
how
with
it is.
families. And oftentimes they say, well, why don't you throw the book at them? Why don't you give them a 20-year sentence or a 30-year sentence? We go on the facts of each and every case, on the evidence that we have. And we're real cognizant about what we're going to put families and children through. When you've got a murder, it's a different story. But we're using the grand jury in a way it was never used before I got in. We're using it as an investigative tool. It used to be the grand jury sat for 2 weeks part-time. Now it sits 4 weeks full-time for 3 months. And we'll have all the witnesses come in right away before they can change their stories on a homicide, for example, rather than have a police officer read 5 or 6 victims or witness statements in. Once we lock in the victims, once we lock in the witness testimony, it's locked in. And if they commit perjury later, it gives us an extra tool to make sure we get the truth out at trial.
So it's a smoother, cleaner way of finding the route to justice.
More efficient way, yes.
Yeah, and so that's good for everyone. Is there anything else that you would like to add or people to know?
Well, again,
while we have the benefit of you being here today.
Sure. If anyone wants any of our school programs, please call. If anyone has questions about opioids or our task force, you can call Liz Haddad or Jill Woolridge. If you're looking for help, for example, you think your child might be using, we can direct you towards resources like Learn to Cope, which is one of the best organizations. And it's a group of parents with children or children with parents who are addicted or have lost someone to the opioid crisis. But we have a ton of resources. If you have questions about anything, if you think your child might be using, we have a hidden in plain sight display which we've brought out to the different schools to show parents what to look for. We've got a ton of resources. Go to our worcesterda.com website and it can tell you some of the things that we do provide to the community. And as I said, prevention's the best part of the job.
I hear prevention, I hear resources, I hear support, I hear all of the bases being covered. I want to thank you.
Thank you
so much for coming, District Attorney
It's been an
Joe
honor to
Early
be here.
Jr.
Thank you.
And I'm Terry Underwood with Southborough Access Media. Thanks for coming.